So I had to say to Father, I am most likely a homosexual.
Mhm.
And he looked at me and he said, "Well, you came to the church with blue hair for the first time. I kind of knew. It was kind of obvious."
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. This is your host, Catholic Converts, aka Emily Dinany. I got married last time. I think I made an episode. So, yeah, my last name has now changed. But I'm here today with a very special guest, and we are going to be talking about something very personal, but I think is such an important topic to be covering in this day and age in the church and just in the world in general. So I'm here with Therese, and she is coming in all the way from France. So I'm so happy we're able to make this work. But I just want to open up the floor and let her introduce herself and kind of share what we're going to be talking about today. So why don't you take it away, Therese?
Thank you so much. So you said my name in French. It's very hard to pronounce for you. I apologize firstly if my accent is a bit hard to understand. So I'm in my last year of what you would say high school. I'm a convert. I converted like 4 years ago now. I got baptized at Easter, and yeah, I'm French. So there's a huge amount of newly baptized youth. And I struggle with same-sex attraction, and people may call me lesbian. So yeah, that's a huge point in the church that has to work, and that we have to at what point not accept but embrace as something
Mhm.
that happens, and that people have a place in the church. Everybody has a place in the church. The thing is, how does the church welcome said person with said problems?
Yeah, beautifully stated. Okay, great. Thank you so much for opening that up. So you've been Catholic 4 years now. I did not
Yeah,
realize that. For whatever reason, I thought that you had recently converted, but maybe I was looking at an old photo and didn't realize the date.
it's totally fine. I heard it, but it was a long process. I asked for catechism classes about 2 years from now. And before that, I kind of roamed amongst denomination.
Mhm.
In France, we have less denomination than you.
Mhm.
You guys have like thousands of Christian denominations, and we have like a few. But
Uh-huh.
Protestantism is going like very very hard on youth. Like youth
Mhm.
is more attracted to Protestantism because it was the first church I went to, so it was really a process of converting. And I had no religious background, like really not one at all. As many French people do have Catholic background, I did have some Catholic background by like my grandparents, but really not much. And I was very, very young when I started to question religion and
Yeah.
the existence of God. And it was beautiful, and at the same time very private,
Mhm.
very, very very private in the way that I encountered God. So in my last year of high school, I'm planning on doing a theology degree. And so in France, it's very hard to have a theology degree because we have what we call laicity. I don't know if that's a word.
Mm-mm.
No. Oh, well, it's the principle that our country doesn't have a religion and is very religionless. So no religious school with sisters are allowed.
Wow.
No public school have theology classes, and religion is very touchy subject here. So I never had like any religious experience until I fell sick.
Mhm.
I felt deeply sick and deeply depressed after some very traumatic experiences with bullying and
Oh.
harassing and all those things that happen too much in France
Mhm.
and in the world. So I was in depression, and I sadly tried to kill myself
Oh.
almost 13 times.
Oh.
It was a long, long fight for a very young me.
Mhm.
And so at that time, I gave up on everything. everything was too much for me and I just wanted to let go. I didn't know what would happen after death. I just knew I didn't want to keep going. And so in that place, God encountered me in the most beautiful way. And in that time, I stopped eating. I stopped moving. I just laid on a bed and just let myself go. And so in that time, my parents were told I was going to die and that they needed to be ready when that time arrived. So that was really the doctors giving up. There were very messy days in the hospital where really no doctor could help me. I did overall maybe 18 hospitalization at from the age of 10 to 12, I think.
Gosh.
Yeah, and the first one was for attempt at suicide. So yeah, that's a horrible time and a horrible age to start that. And so I wanted to take a walk because it had been 2 weeks since I last ate. I don't even know how I could stand, but I did. And I walked, and you have to know that hospitals, there are no Catholic or any religious hospital in France. There are few, really a few, but not this one. So I was in a public hospital, no religious text was allowed in. And I was in a chair and a chair, yeah, a chair for disabled people. I don't know how you
A
call that.
wheelchair?
Yeah, a
Mhm.
wheelchair. Thank you
Yeah, of course.
for that. And so I just rolled to the library and I found a book. I would say I would never touched it if I knew what it was, because at the time I had a very bad view on religion because I was told that religion was um to dominate people, to enslave people, to stop and control them in their life. And so I picked up this book that was covered in paint and covered in painted flowers. And in hindsight, I could say that it must have been something that a previous patient left.
Mhm.
And I opened it and I ended on the verse in Jeremiah, so the Old Testament, and Jeremiah chapter 31, verses 3. And it's kind of saying, it's a wild translation, but it said, "The Lord has appeared upon me. I have loved you with everlasting love, and upon that I have shown you my unconditional love and friendship." In French, it's a bit like that. It might not be the same, but and so I started crying and I didn't even understand why I was crying. Why would I be crying from a book? A book, just a book.
Yeah.
But then I knew that I thought I would be unlovable. I could never be loved. When truly there was a God, and there was a God that loved me so much that he encountered me by a book. And this book I kept in my room. I had a roommate who was there for the exact same reason. She was on her first hospital stay. She was there because she tried to overdose, and she was really young. She was 2 years older than me, but still a kid. And during 20 days, I studied and studied and studied this book. I studied religion. I studied the history of the church. I had a laptop that was given to me to continue classes, but I did use it more to do research on religion than classes, I have to say. And after this 20 days of like prayer, knowing what prayer was, I didn't even understand how to pray. So my first prayer was more like, "Lord, I don't know who you are. I'm trying to talk to you. I'm trying to encounter you. I think you tried to say something to me, and I didn't want to close any doors. So I also read the Quran in its entirety. I felt like something was lacking, and I didn't agree with all of it. There was really something lacking. I read other religious book. I tried to understand every point of view of religious people. And after 20 days, I finished the entire New Testament. I studied it. It was like highlighted. Really, I had my phone, so I looked at some amazing people, Protestant. Most of them were Protestants, And I'd say that it really helped me study the Bible, but something was lacking, still something. I knew it was the truth, but something was lacking. And so after just 20 days of finishing the entire New Testament, which is kind of, yeah, I studied the Bible 6 hours a day minimum.
Wow.
And, well, there was nothing to do with the hospital because people were all depressed and we were all there for the same reason. And that gave me a reason to keep going. And so after the 20 days, I went and I talked to the other girls. I talked to my roommates. I talked to the other girls that were prostitutes, prostitutes. I talked to drug addicts. I talked to people that were in foster care, and they were all broken and thinking that nobody could ever help them, ever love them, ever look at them as a person. And I showed them the book. I showed them this holy Bible. I showed them that they were loved, that they were they were perfect in the way they were, and that they needed to love themselves because there was a God that loved them. And so upon that, I talked to six little girls because we were children. Really, we were children. One of them converted to the Byzantine Rite Church because of their origins, obviously. One of them converted to Orthodoxy. We were still in good contact, even though we have a religious difference, but we try to know that we are brothers and sisters in Christ first. And the others just converted to Catholicism, got baptized before me because I didn't feel brave enough to ask for baptism. And so after 52 days, I had to get out of the hospital because I was cured. I was cured. And the doctor were kind of shocked. How could I go that well? And my friends were all leaving and they were all getting better and stopping whatever they were doing that was prostitution, drugs. They were living, truly living, and not just surviving. And so they sent me off. I was in the car with my mom, and my mother looked at me and said, "So, what are you gonna do now?" Because I wasn't going to school. I wasn't having any social life. I had one friend, and that was all. And I looked at her and I said, "Mother, please bring me to church." And she
Oh.
must have thought I was crazy. She looked at me like I just said that she had three heads, like really. And so Sunday came by and she me to a Protestant church. Weird experience because it was so in my family we talk a lot of English, so it was an American church that was sent on a mission kind of, but they weren't adapting at all to the culture, so it was very weird. And I felt something deep that yes, they were studying the Bible, but there was something lacking, still lacking. Still the thirst of the I thirst of Jesus on the cross was really in my heart. It was insatiable, really. And I spent 3 months there, I think, and I left because they said something about two things that was really hurting me. They said transgender people, LGBTQ people, all of them were devils sent on earth, and that they needed to either die or to I don't know exactly the words they said, but they said something about getting away from everyone and just repent and change and never ever going to heaven because they were not worthy. And the same service they bring, that no, it's funny in a pitiful way, but it's funny because they were ignorant. They bring Saint Therese statue. And they said, "Look, those Catholics, they worship Mary. They love this Mary. And look what I can do to this Mary." And the pastor took a kind of thing to destroy the statue, a stick, and he still was hitting the statue, and it didn't break. So at the end, they just let it fall, and it broke, and I felt heart ache because I was always respecting others' religion. And I said, that's not right. That's not right. That's not the way it is. And so the Sunday after that, even though I had all my doubts about the Catholic Church, I went to this Catholic church that was 2 steps away from my home. And I never went before because it was always closed. And I entered and I got myself on the last pew on the left in a small country church. So there were like maximum 20 people at the mass. I was all behind. Nobody saw me. And I went and I saw 2 people kneel because in France, kneeling is traditional and you are affiliated with the traditionalist movement and you will get comments, a lot of hateful comments.
Wow.
And so I didn't know, but I felt like I needed to kneel. And I was on the left side of the church, so I couldn't see everything, but I just saw the body of Christ being elevated. And I cried the same tears that left my eyes when I saw the Bible. And I read this beautiful verse. I just cried and I recognized I don't know anything about this mass. I don't know anything about what is happening during the mass. I don't know what they are saying, what they are responding to. But this I know is God.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it was just pointless to try to say no. I gotta search another church. No, I found home.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. So how old were you at that point?
I was about 12, I think. Yeah,
Oh, so
going
what
alone.
how was your family's reaction? When did you finally, after that moment that you experienced the Eucharist and the Holy Mass, what was the events following? Did you end up like saying you wanted to convert right away? Were you hesitant? Like, how did that continue?
I would say that was a funny state. I still have paintings I did because I didn't want to ask for a cross.
Mm-hmm.
So I painted a cross and I hid it in my room. And sometimes there was like times where they opened the door and saw a big book under which there was a little book that was Bible. And they were telling me, "What are you reading?" And I was like, I'm reading something interesting." I didn't even know what big book was. Was just hiding. And so they knew, but didn't say anything because
Mhm.
they thought it was just a phase.
Yeah.
Everything was just a phase.
Yeah.
The phase is pretty long now.
Yeah.
And so one day at the Sunday dinner, I said to my father and to my mother, Mother, father, I think I want to convert to Catholicism. My mother just put down the knife, the fork, and just looked at me and said, Really? You want to join a community that hates you for you?
Wow.
Complicated.
So, okay, so at this point in your story, and by the way, I should have said this earlier, but thank you for sharing all of that. I can't even imagine what you were going through, what your family was going through seeing you in and out of the hospital like that. I would not wish that on my worst enemy. Like that is completely horrible and tragic. So, I'm so grateful that the Lord spoke to you and brought good out of that. But my heart is grieved for any person that has to experience that. And so, but at this point, did you know about your sexuality? Like what were your thoughts going through your head? At what point did you discover like you were attracted to girls and how did you wrestle with that internally?
So I think I always kind of knew the way
Mhm.
that girls, my friends were always talking about boys, and I thought, oh, it must be because I'm too young. I don't care
Mhm.
about boys. And my family was praising me for that because I didn't care about boys. I was too focused on studies and studies and studies. And when I approached what you would call middle school,
Mhm.
it's kind of like older for us, but your middle school is kind of the equivalent.
Mhm.
I just heard about liking girls and I looked at my friends and I said, well, everybody likes girls.
Mhm.
And I was kind of shocked and to know that no, it was not usual. So I, I was kind of in a difficult position.
Uh-huh.
And I cried a lot because
Oh,
I understood that the slurs they were talking about sometimes I was that slur.
yeah.
I was going to be hated for that, and I just cried a lot, and I had really really bad friends and really really bad influences at this point because they mm, outed me to the whole school. And
Wow.
when I said that I don't really talk about this often, but when I said that I had a particularly difficult experience that led me to try and kill myself, I was raped so really
Oh,
early, and I was dealing with that. I was dealing with that at the time, and I had then bullying, and that there was a point where I was just not talking to anyone trying to be friends with me. I was just trying to ignore them because I knew that if they were close to me, they would get beaten up, they would get harassed sexually, and um, by always there would be problems for them. So I just rejected everyone. I just completely just left alone. And one day a boy said, "I'm going to bring a baseball bat for you. And I'm gonna kill you the next day."
oh my
I
God.
asked for help. I asked countless times for help because I was terrified. I was
Yeah.
getting beaten up every day. I was getting I went home with scars. I came out to my parents and they looked at me and I say, "No, no, just stop saying that. You're not that. You're not them." And it was really, I felt alone. I felt completely alone. Some girls sometimes would date me to try out if they were into girls or not. And I couldn't even say no because that wasn't my choice. That wasn't my choice. When I tried to kill myself for the first time, I was 10, so I was really early. And then it was worse and worse and every year. Then I got myself a friend that was part of the LGBT community that was a lesbian too. She's still my friend, by the way. She's still supporting me, and everything. But she brought me to parades, and I felt kind of off about it because I didn't feel the need to parade. I thought that I wanted more rights in the way that I would be more protected. I didn't want to just like scream and dance, and I didn't see how that would help the situation. And so I was lost between too many spaces and too many places and too many people and their culture and their appreciation of the fact that I was lesbian. But really, people think that we just kind of realize it one day and say, "Whoa, I'm gay." But really,
Mm-hmm.
it was a lot of processing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I understood that I would never fall in love with a man, I felt deep, deep sorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I cried a lot. I wasn't happy. I was sad because I knew that my life would be a fight all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I'm so sorry for everything you've gone through. Oh my gosh. I
Don't
just can't. You are so brave. Oh my gosh. Oh, when at this point you are in middle school, so you're like what, about 12 still,
Yeah,
13-ish?
yeah, when I went out, I just had converted. I had my there was multiple degrees, and when you reach the end of middle school, I I graduated early because I was what they called gifted.
Mhm.
When really I didn't feel any gift at all. But I was very studious. So
Mhm.
I graduated early, so about 13 when I left,
Okay.
and I just had gotten out of the hospital when I graduated and went to high school. Yeah.
Okay, got you. So you had experienced that, had at this point the last time you were hospitalized was when you were 12 years old?
Yes, at the end of my 12 year. Yeah.
Okay. So, at this point now, you experienced that, traumatic experience. You were bullied. You had attempted to take your own life numerous times. You discovered God while you were hospitalized. And then you began exploring different churches, religions. You end up discovering the beauty of the Eucharist. Praise be to God. And now, so after experiencing the joy of God, how did that affect the way that you were still in middle school at that time after you came back from being hospitalized? So you were still getting bullied, you were still experiencing, um, that stuff from people at school, is that correct?
So actually, I didn't go to school often because
Mhm.
I was given like kind of a leave.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I went some days, and some days I would just go and I would say, "Go ahead, hit me if you want. I do not care because
Wow.
I may be what you call slurs, and I may be gay, I may be whatever you call me, but I don't care because I know I am loved and I don't need your love. I don't need your appreciation. I don't need anything that you can give me. Everything that you can give me, God can give me more." And
Mhm.
so I just, before I would sometimes try to fight back, I
Mhm.
became kind of fighter,
Mhm.
but then just I completely surrendered. I got hit, okay, but I just didn't feel that much. The pain wasn't that much physical. It was more of looking into the eyes of the people that were beating you and just seeing hate, hate and hate, and just feeling that you don't belong here, you don't belong anywhere. And now I knew that I didn't need their approval and that I was what they called me. I was lesbian. I was whatever slur they call me. If they wanted to call me that, okay. But that wasn't what was the most of me. The most of
Yeah.
me that was that I was a child of God
Yeah.
and that it didn't hurt me anymore. The the
Yeah.
the the hits and the beatings and all of that and the humiliation, I could only offer that up. That was always what I did. And I got my degree. I went in that same school. I passed the exams and I just had prayed my first rosary, very anxious about that because I didn't know really my position on saints.
Mhm.
And I felt deeply loved by our mother. And yeah, I went to the exam. I passed the exam and I went out and I said, I am ready for another life. I am ready to high school. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how it's gonna go. I know that my reputation is gonna follow. I know it because we're in a small town,
Mhm.
but I do not care because I trust. I trust, I trust, I trust. That was always what I said.
That's beautiful. So, at what point did you officially enroll in like catechism classes at a church and start the conversion process?
So actually, that's kind of funny. I had a grandmother that was working at a Carmelite monastery, and she gave me a book that's very known, special for French people. I mean, please,
Mhm.
Story of a Soul by Saint Therese of Lisieux. And I read it and I said, wow, wait, I can be something else than a wife? I have a place in the church? Women have
Mhm.
something else than marriage? And in France, it's very, um, like religious life is not that well represented at all. I mean, it's
Mhm.
pretty worldwide, but in France, even in our dioceses, I had never have ever heard of religious life. I didn't know what that was. And so I started praying with Saint Therese. And it was the day before my 14th birthday. And when I started to question if I wanted to become a sister or not, because I wanted that. I was almost envious of Saint Therese
Mhm.
for having this life, inside life. And
Mhm.
then I kind of jolted back into reality and learned, oh, I'm not baptized. I'm going to church every Sunday since 1 year and a half. Tomorrow it's my birthday. It's on the 15th of August. It's the Assumption of Mary. It's my birthday. And I cannot receive communion. I cannot live in the church. But will they want me there?
Mm.
And obviously, I just went to a priest and I asked to receive baptism. And in France, it's very long. It's 2 years.
Wow.
It was long, but I was always impatient, and it taught me a lot about patience, about learning, about humility, and so I converted and I started catechism classes, and I would run after my classes to go to catechism, and I would go see sisters in all dioceses around me. We have a really known monastery in my diocese that is the Visitation Sisters of Nantes. So
Mhm.
the city, the diocese city, and they do what they call sauvegarde. So it's about salvation
Mhm.
and it's about the Sacred Heart. And so I started talking to them, and they said, "Dear, you're coming 3 times a week. You're buying things, yes, but I don't think you want to buy rosaries every single day. So what are you doing here?" And I said, "Sister, I love your life. I love everything that you do. I love that you pray for the souls of people. I love it. I love everything about your consecration to Christ." And she said, "Daughter, please research your spirituality and come back." After that, I continued catechism again and again. And at the same time, this wonderful sister, this wonderful nun, told me to discern.
Mhm.
I went to Carmel. I went to so many orders. I went to less appreciable orders that were kind of abusive. So this was a
Mhm.
another hard experience. And then I discerned that my spirituality was very oriented towards the Carmelites spirituality, thanks to Saint Therese.
Mhm.
And so I received baptism on this year's Easter Vigil, and I received communion too. And I can say that really communion was everything. Every time I went to mass and just looked and was so sad because I couldn't receive communion. Every sigh, every tear that like was ever about not being fully into the church. Well, it just disappeared. It was all worth it. Everything was worth it. I could go back in time and live all of it again. Live all the doubts and the hate of myself and all of that I could do again just to receive him.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah. I think that's the wisdom of the saints is you see them experiencing some of the most horrendous things that anyone could experience and you wonder how did they survive that with joy too. It's not even that they survived but they were joyful in the midst of it and they repeat similar sentiments that all of it is worth it when you see the inner workings of Christ through it and you see how he brought such good out of it too. Um,
Yes, yes,
it's remarkable. Wow.
it is.
That's so beautiful. So what was your experience in talking with these sisters? Did you share with them that you have same-sex attraction? Like how was that received?
So first of all, I had the dialogue between like sisters and me was always with a priest.
Okay.
So first, before saying to the sisters, I struggle with same-sex attraction, well, I had to say to the priest that I struggled with that.
Mhm.
And so it was a really hard time because at that time I had fully said, also by the consecration of the scapular, that
Mhm.
um I would I would live in chastity all my life because I would rather live in chastity and struggle and be kind of frustrated and everything than live apart from God. And
Yeah.
that would be impossible. So I had to say to Father, Father, I am most likely a homosexual. And he looked at me and he said, "Well, you came to the church with blue hair for the first time. I kind of knew." A Polish priest with a loud accent said to me, "Well, it was kind of obvious."
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
I was crying and crying. And I was saying, "Father, I am homosexual, and I know it's horrible and it's a sin." And he was like, "Calm down, calm down. You came with a blue short haircut, and you say I want to convert. Obviously, I know you were homosexual." And yeah, that
Oh
was
my
that was really that was something. And he said,
god.
"Well, why do you want to be a sister?" I looked into him and I looked into his eyes and I just said, "Father, I want to be a saint." And then I kind of looked back and I said, "What did I just say? How could I say that? That was so horrible to say because I mean I was a sinner. I was a homosexual. How could I achieve sainthood? How could I ever compare to those that have come before me and that have embraced the Christian life at the most beautiful way possible? How could I ask that?" And he looked at me and said, "Well, welcome to the church." We're all trying there. And he looked at me and said, "Are you dating?" I said, "No, Father, I'm not planning on dating. I'm not planning on anything like that. It's my personal choice of living in chastity because I do not want sin and I will not marry a man and play with his feelings and say that I love him when I do not feel love towards him." And he looked at me and said, "So where's the sin? I don't see any sin."
Yeah.
And that was hard for me because I thought that being gay was a sin. And he said,
Mhm.
"No, no, being gay isn't a sin. The fact is that if you go and do homosexual activity,
Mhm.
if you go and date, if you go and have like premarital relationships with a person of the same sex, you are sinning." And
Yeah.
I am not planning on doing that, Father. And he said, "So you are not sinning. You are just looking for a place in the church, and we have tons of place for you." And he said, "Oh, some parishioner here is a drug addict. Some parishioner here was a prostitute before being baptized. Some parishioner here did this, did that, without telling any names." But he
Wow.
said, "Do you think that you are not welcome here?"
Mm.
I said, "Even if I wasn't welcome here, even if people chase me with a broom, I don't know, I would still come back because I'm not here for the parishioners. I'm here for the Eucharist."
Wow.
And he looked at me and he said, "So you are already in the church. Now you need to get baptized. You need to get your life together. You need to finish your studies and then we'll talk."
Mhm.
And the nuns said the same thing. They
Mhm.
said, "Are you going into the church and going into the convent to be with sisters and to be living a life of chastity, poverty, and obedience? Or are you coming here because you have no choice or because
Mm.
you will be near other women?" I said,
Mhm.
"Sister, no, never, never. I would never do that.
Yeah.
That's horrible." And she said, "So what's the problem?" And that was kind of world changing for me because I
Mhm.
knew that, yes, like a lot of Catholic people said they were Catholic and then were homophobic,
Mhm.
but knowing that just it was not a problem because I was a sinner like every other people, that I wasn't in a situation of sin, so why would it be a problem? And I wasn't looking at the sisterhood as something to replace
Mhm.
marriage. I was looking at religious life because chastity was my vocation.
Mhm.
And the fact that I was a homosexual was just another fight,
Yeah.
another struggle. And some people call it a cross, but I don't really think it's a cross. I think it's just a fact about us, and that we don't need the world in general. We don't need the world. So why should we live the way the world tells us to live because we are homosexual?
Mhm.
I mean, I have same sex attraction. Doesn't mean I have to marry a girl. That's
Yeah.
just nonsense.
Yeah. How
Hard.
has response sorry.
No problem.
I was gonna say, how has, uh, people who aren't Christian that maybe you affiliate with at school or something, how do they respond to you, saying you're going to embrace a life of chastity?
Wow. That is something. So I have my best friend that's a lesbian and that's not Catholic at all. Went to my baptism, went to my first communion, went to all my sacraments,
Wow.
went with me and just loves me for me. But she said, "Are you sure you wanna live a life of chastity? You could find love, you could marry. You're still young." I said, "Yes, but I I don't plan on like enjoying youth. I'm planning on enjoying preparing for sainthood. I'm preparing for life in heaven. That's what I'm preparing." She looked at me, she said, "Well, you are my best friend. You can say stupid stuff sometimes, and I'm just forced to oblige."
Wow.
And then there was my friends from school, the less I had, but I was happy anyway. They were like, "But you're gay." And I said, "Yes, and so what?" So I can't be Catholic because I live in a way that I didn't choose. And they said all but nuns, isn't that like boring? I said, how can life be boring when you have all you can ask for? Because the Eucharist is all. I don't ask for anything more than your Eucharist. If I can live in a life of sainthood, in poverty, chastity, obedience, perfect. But I just need the Eucharist. Just need the Eucharist.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and they were quite they wondered why I was choosing that so early, like so young. They said, "Oh, you could do like all the sins now and then convert.
Yeah.
Do that." And I said, "That's not how I plan to do. I'm not trying to abuse of God's mercy."
Mhm.
And then there were my parents. That was very different. And my
Mm.
parents hated the church. They
Mhm.
hated how people that claimed to be Christian, like, hated me, like, were judging me.
Yeah.
And I just said to them, "Well, I'm trying to see what I want to do after school, after high school, if I want to go to college or something." I said, mm, "Well, why are you going to so many convents in all across France? Are you planning to be a nun?" And I thought about lying, and then I
Mm,
said, "Why should I lie about something I'm not ashamed of?"
mm,
And I looked at my mother at the time and I said, "Yes, yes, I think I want to be a sister." She looked at me, say, "Well, let's get home. We'll talk about it."
mhm,
And after so many convents, I found one that I like particularly, and I talked to the sisters, and they were very happy with me joining. They wanted me to have like studies before that, so I
mhm,
chose theology. And then my mother arrived at our house, and there was my sister that was in. It's my oldest sister that's in her studies,
mhm.
and my mother just sat down and said, "Sister's name, go get me some wine. We're celebrating. Your sister has found something to marry."
Oh,
Yeah, and
wow.
that was something. And then my sister was like, "What is she talking about?" And I said, "Uh, I think I want to be a sister." And my sister sat in the sat in the sofa and went, "Oh my, there's gonna be a sister. My sister's gonna be a sister."
That's hilarious.
That's
Uh,
hilarious, really.
It's it's so funny because when I first converted, I mean, our stories are very different, but I feel there's a lot of overlap. Like I was fairly young. I mean, older than you were, but I was about 14 years old, 13, 14 years old when I started seriously considering religion and God and what my purpose was. And it was when I was 17 that I converted to the Catholic Church. And I had the same reactions from my parents of like, are you going to become a nun? Like, my sister, my older sister, my twin sister, like them kind of asking similar questions. And I think there's that type of sister bond that you have where there's like nothing off limits that your sisters can ask you. And you
Yeah.
know they're going to judge you no matter what you say. So you're like, okay, well, no, I'm not going to be a nun, but thank you for asking. And I think actually in my older sister's phone, none of them are Catholic. She has my name as Sister Emily. And it's like, okay, like I am your sister and my name is Emily. So yeah, that works, I guess. But I know you're hinting at something else. I'm married now. So like that's not in my picture for at least who knows, never probably. But anyway, that's so funny. I think that's so sweet. I have my little statue of Saint Therese right here.
No
She is
way.
my favorite saint.
Oh,
I also really love the story. So I read the story of a soul when how old was I? I mean, it was only a few years ago. I was 20 years old, and it changed my life. Absolutely changed my life. I developed a love and affection for Saint Therese more than more than any other saint that I've ever read about, looked into, read their writings. She just touched my soul, especially her line, about how she wishes she could be a priest. She wishes she could be the missionary. She wishes she could be all things, and that through all of that, she realizes her vocation is simply to love. And I think that's the beauty that we find in St. Therese of like any person, man or woman, whatever life they're called to, we all find that similar bond of unity, which is ultimately at the end of the day, what God is calling us to is to love. And that's going to look very different from person to person, that specific calling. But I also really love her parents because her parents are the
of course.
first married canonized couple. And so I have a deep love for Saints Louis and Zelly Martin. I have a book, which you should definitely, I'm going to recommend this to my audience.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
it's in my closet right now because I was reading it in a chapel, but it's just a collection of their writings, like of their letters to one another. And it's mostly Saint Zelly writing to her sister-in-law, her brother, and her daughters as they get older. But it's absolutely beautiful, the love that this family poured out. And anyway, all that to say, she is a wonderful person to make intercession to. I'm so glad that she has played a special role in your journey. And I was going to ask, what is the life out in France with just like, I know I've encountered people who are celibate lay people. So they don't end up joining a convent, they don't end up getting married, but there are certain charisms or groups. I'm blanking on their name. Opus Dei. They're
Yes.
kind of like, lay people that are working. Like, what are your thoughts on that type of ministry? Have you ever considered that? Like, where are your thoughts on that?
Of course I did. I considered all things like lying to a man and saying that I do want to marry him. And I said, oh, that's not very sane. I considered all things. And I think that I really, really wanted to give everything to God. And I wanted to join a Carmelite order. I wanted to be a missionary. So I found apostolic sisters that are Carmelites that were the full habit of Saint Therese. That's new for me. Yeah, that's pretty new. And I thought about being celibate, virgin, consecrated.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I wanted this poverty and I wanted this obedience and I wanted this community life and the fact that you live in the church itself, like the convent is the nearest to a church. There's a verse, I only know it in French, but it's the only thing I ask of you, O Lord, is to live in your house every single day of my life. I don't know if you have that
Yeah. Um,
almost.
yeah, I think it's a psalm, to dwell
Yes,
in the
it's
house of the Lord forever.
yeah,
King David is praying that. Yeah,
yeah.
that's
And
beautiful.
that is what I want to do. I thought about being a virgin consecrated, but I think my life would be lacking because I thirst for communal life. I thirst for ministry that is really mission work.
Hmm.
And you can do that as a laity, of course. But it's not for me. Every vocation is personal, and I think I'm not called to that. I'm really called to this community life and this total abandonment. Like you get the veil, you cut your hair, you do everything, you give everything. Everything is God's, and the community is for God. So everything I give to the community is for God. And I already thought about, like, I have so many icons. What am I gonna do with that? And my only response was I'm going to give it to the group that does catechism classes. And I want
Mm.
every single one of my icons, I want every single one of my crosses to go to a convert,
No,
because they don't have money for icons that are very expensive, that some Catholic in France have from their grandparents or something like that. I want them to have that, to have the possibility of that.
That's beautiful. What would you say? I know this is, it's hard because you kind of hinted at this earlier, but the church doesn't have a lot of outlets or opportunities for people in your circumstance that struggle with same-sex attraction, and are trying to strive and live faithfully to the church's
Uh,
laws. I know of somebody who he was gay and he attempted to join a monastery and they denied him because he's open about that, he had homosexual tendencies. And from my understanding, the church does, when it comes to the priesthood in particular, you hinted at this earlier with what the sister said. If it is not a free choice of like, I am actively choosing celibacy, then they will likely deny you because they're like,
yeah,
it needs to be free. Or um, what was the other one? If you have deep-seated tendencies, homosexual tendencies, I believe Pope Benedict or somebody in the Vatican was like, you cannot be part of the priesthood, basically. So,
yeah.
what has your encounter with that been more specifically? Like, do you see that there's a tension? Like, because I'm sure there's going to be people listening to this that are thinking, you joining a convent filled with women is going to be an occasion of sin for you. Living with women in close community. So how would you respond to that? Like, what has your experience been with all of that?
I would respond several things. That
Mhm,
first of all, I get that some people get not accepted into the priesthood or the monastery because they do not know how to they did not choose religious life or priesthood by choice, but by kind of replacement. And
mm,
that's not holy, that's not wanted by God. I would say also that that is going to maybe shock somebody, but I'm going to say it. Um we homosexual people are like straight people. I think some a straight priest may be attracted by a woman.
mhm,
Doesn't mean he will not follow his vow of celibacy. If he
mhm.
does, he's not called. And we as LGBT community are not like, it's not because I like girls that I will like every single girl.
Yeah.
And even so, like I heard a sister say one time she saw a man in the church, and that was the ideal man. And then
Mhm,
she said, well, the ideal man, yes, but is my vocation not better? Like I'm marrying Jesus.
mhm.
Is the man better than Jesus? That's not. And some people may be afraid that, oh wow, a homosexual is coming into a convent. But the lust in the eyes of a person is not different. Like a straight person can have lust towards, less people talk about it, but a woman can have lust for a man. A man can have lust for a woman. And if lust happens, that's a sin.
Yeah.
But we are not animals. We can control urges. And I think that when, I'm sorry, but how can you be attracted to someone that you call sister? You
Yeah,
are
it's
my
true.
sister in Christ. I first of all can say in all honesty that lust has never been something that I dealt with. I'm lucky to say that,
Hmm.
because I'm a woman, and that doesn't mean a woman doesn't lust. No, but I'm a woman, and I know how it is to be seen as an object of desire.
Hmm.
And I will never look at somebody that way, because that is spitting on their dignity.
Hmm.
And I think that if you dare to look at a sister, at someone that consecrated their whole life to Christ in a lustful way, you are to be like question in your face.
Yeah.
That's not right, and you know it's not right. So I go in the convent for a reason. I do not go to look at women. I do not go for other sister. I go for community, yes, but I go for me. I go for my life. I go in the convent for sainthood. I go in the convent to follow the vocation that God has. If He wants to give me this vocation, if God has given me a vocation, I want to enter the monastery for that vocation,
Hmm.
and not for living with others. I could be a Carthusian sister if I wanted, if God called me to that. And I'm just not called to that. But that doesn't mean I'm looking at other sisters. And I think that's quite that seems horrible to me.
Yeah.
That makes me feel deep sorrow that people may think that when you enter a convent, you look at others if you have homosexuality and same-sex attraction issues, that you look at others, sisters and brothers, with lust. That's a problem. You're not made for the convent if you do that.
Yeah. I think you actually draw out a really good distinction here that some people don't consider too much because you talk about a priest being attracted to their parishioner. Yeah, I think that definitely happens, especially if you're a younger priest. You just joined the priesthood. There are younger women that are single that are looking for spiritual guidance. And if you're spending time with this young woman who is attractive, like naturally feelings of attraction can result. And that's normal and that's beautiful. But as a self controlled, chaste man, your goal is to direct that desire back to God. I think the distinction is if this priest were living with a woman, that's where, things get different in terms of the convent. But I think that you point out a really important distinction, which is some people naturally have different temptations, have different amounts of attraction, of desire, of things like that, which that's something you have to factor into the equation. There might be somebody who was living a homosexual lifestyle for 30 years of their life. And then they come to God and they're like, well, I can't get married in the church. So what are my options? Well, I guess my only option is to become a priest. And so they try to join the priesthood because they've been living that lifestyle for 30 years. And then they're like, whoa, sir, I'm sorry, but like you have been living this lifestyle for 30 years. It's very hard that your mind is just going to automatically flip the switch while you're living with other men, yada, yada. So I think there is room for nuance for conversation in this space in
Yes.
the church, and I think it needs to happen because something that that God has not condemned as black or white. Who are we to prohibit somebody? And I think that needs to challenge us. Like, who are we to say, you, Therese, God is not calling you to join the convent? Like who are we to say that if the sisters are welcoming you and if they're saying that they understand your situation, you're being open, you're being transparent with them, and you are following the church's laws and they are following the church's laws, like who are we to say no, that's not what God is telling you to do? And no one can obviously know, right? No one is you. And so I think we all need to, as people that aren't in a circumstance like yours, I think we need to be okay with the discomfort that can bring up in ourselves. I think we need to be okay with not knowing. I think we need to be okay with the tension that this inevitably causes, because it is such a, I mean, to be transparent, it's such a touchy subject in the church right now because you see very polar opposite extremes in the church of people saying, "No, you can be gay and be Catholic and go get married and that's okay, and the church is going to change its position on this issue, or you don't need to follow the church's position on this issue." And then you have the opposite extreme, kind of like the crazy Protestant service you went to, who say if you just have same-sex attraction, that's a sin and you're going to hell and you're not welcome here and you need to be kept away from everybody else and be
Yeah.
exiled and isolated. Like you
It's
have
the
these
heresy. It's the heresy of predestination. And I think who are we to say that? And there's
Yeah.
so extreme points of view, especially in my country. I know that there is so many problems with that. Like in France, you have two sides. They are very traditional, condemning homosexuality, even if there's no position of sin.
Yeah.
And there are liberals that say, "Oh, go get married. If it's not in the church, it's okay. You're both Catholics, right? If you
Yeah.
get not, it's not great." I no, both are. I think with all humility, because I am just a random. I am a humble sinner, but both sides are in the wrong, because if
Yeah.
you chase people out of the Catholic community because it's traditionally not okay, well, homosexuality is said to be in all times.
Yeah.
There were homosexuality people. There were homosexual people in all history. It's just that we now have the problem that we have to address it. We cannot just dismiss it all the time.
Yeah.
We can't do that.
Yeah.
And the traditional point of view is that it's a sin, it's a sin, it's a sin. They have to repent and change, and they can change, and they can become heterosexual, and that's just not possible. That's
Yeah.
we're like, sadly for them, because I personally, I think it the fact that I'm homosexual have has given me trials that I have took as gifts. There's fruit to spiritual fights, and but I didn't choose to be gay, and
Yeah.
I definitely can't change that. I wish
Yeah.
I wish I could, but what
Yeah.
would it? And even if I could marry a woman, even if that would change, would I still want that? No, I don't think so, because that wouldn't be a fruitful marriage, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing people don't talk about is like these lesbian couples. I've seen them on social media who get, married. They are heartbroken over the fact that they will never, ever, ever be able to have a child with this person that they love most in the world. And that child will never biologically be both of theirs. And
Mm,
that's heartbreaking. Like, truly, that is heartbreaking. As somebody who would say, of course, I don't agree with that lifestyle, but I can be sorrowful for those people who are longing for something good, to have a fruitful relationship. They're longing for something like a child. That's a beautiful, natural longing, but they're never going to be able to have that in the way God designed. That's sad. And so I think voices like yours need to be heard more in the church and in the world in general about like you have chosen something that you find great joy in and that is possible. I think we live in a culture that says if you don't have romantic or sexual relations, you're going to die, basically. And it's like, that is just not true. Can we
that is
stop?
not true at
Can we
all.
stop that narrative? Also, I mean, I think sex is really a god of our generation. It's like we worship it and we worship it so much that we abort our children when they inevitably result from a union that we're not proud of. And it's like, you will not die if you don't have sexual intimacy. Like, you just won't.
Yes,
Y-
it's terrible, because I think I don't know, because I have like external point of view from your country, but in
Mhm.
France, Catholics, there's like Catholics that claim to be Catholics and said, well, you gotta try the car before you buy it, and
Yeah.
things like. And that is so horrible, because how can you put the body of a person, the temple of of the Holy Spirit, in such a objectified way? And
Yeah.
sex is good, because it's made God made sex, but it's made to be enjoyed in a holy way, in a way that like cannot harm people, because people will get harmed. I the numbers of times I have heard friends my age, just my age, and I'm not that old, so that's a
Yeah.
problem. I have heard people like as young as 13 say to me, "Oh, I'm so sad because I did my my first sexual experience, and the boy is just horrible now. Is not replying. Well, it's horrible, and I feel sorrow for them.
Yeah.
Be- Their body is sacred, and it should be like respected. So
Yeah.
if you really want somebody to hold that body and hold that deep, intimate relationship dear to your heart, you have to have someone that loves you for your heart and not your body. And that, sorry, but the preparation for marriage in the church is a long term process.
Yeah.
You have to
Exactly.
wait. You have to wait, and you have to
Yeah.
choose to get married. So there's no way that a person can get married in the get good like in a good way married in the church and just want the person for their body, or they haven't like done their catechism at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that God did that for us not to get harmed. And
Yeah.
that people don't understand that, and I understand that it's hard because sex is such a normal like thing, but it's still something that touches you deeply in your heart. Your body is connected to your heart, and that nothing can change that.
100%. Yeah. I mean, you said it perfectly. Our generation, I think they're searching after meaning. They're searching to feel something, to feel love, to feel desired, and it leaves them left even more broken. Oftentimes, it leaves them depressed. I mean, studies show that girls under the age of 18, teenage girls that engage in sexual intimacy with people, with particularly boys, I think was the study, that they are left more depressed compared to girls who don't, and more anxious. And so you see the disastrous consequences of this. And so I think it's very encouraging to see such a young soul. I mean, I'm saying this and I'm only a few years older than you, but like such a young soul that has so much wisdom and that understands like there's beauty in the world, there's goodness in the world, relationships, and all of these things are desirable, but nothing compares to Jesus. Nothing
Yes.
will ever compare to that. And I'm saying that as a married woman who gets to enjoy like the fullness of the fruit of that. Like I love my husband to death, but nothing will ever compare to Jesus. Nothing will ever compare to him.
That
Uh,
first.
yeah. So, um, yeah, I guess maybe one thing, this has been so amazing talking to you and hearing your story. You've encouraged me and inspired me in so many ways and challenged me. And I'm so excited for other people to hear what you have to say. And yeah, for the people wondering, how did I even meet Therese? It's like I literally was on Instagram and I saw her comment something on this post about a little bit about her journey, how she is a lesbian Catholic who has chosen to live a chaste lifestyle. And I just reached out to her and I was like, hey, like, I want to talk to somebody like you because I feel like there's not enough space in the world to that focuses on this issue and that talks about it and that highlights stories like yours. And I just want to talk to you. And yeah, and that's how this happened. So it's wonderful. But I guess a last thing we can end on is what is one thing that you wish people could take away from your story, whether they're Catholic, not Catholic? What is one thing you want people to know and take away?
I would that depends on my people, in a way that my people as a lesbian person, as a person that people will affiliate with the LGBT community. I want to say that everybody has a place in the church, that nobody can chase the gay away, and that nobody can tell you that you don't have a place in the church. I want to say also that you don't have to live the way that somebody tells you. You listen to your heart before everything. And to the people that are part also of my community that are Catholics, to the people that don't struggle with same sex attraction, I want to say, don't judge someone. And when you see people sinning, when you see people being in homosexual relationships, you can talk to them. You can help them, and you cannot judge them because of what they're doing, because it won't help them, and treating them differently will just make them leave the church, and that doesn't bring them much closer to God. And a last thing I would like want everybody to know, that there's always hope. There's always hope. And no matter what situation we're in, there's always hope for salvation in any way, and sometimes in ways we can't even understand yet. And that if one day someone is struggling with same-sex attraction, that they know that it's not something that's unnatural, but it's not something you have to obviously listen to. And you're not an animal, and you can do whatever you want. And there's hope. And there's hope because you have the ability to choose goodness, to choose holiness, and you have to choose wisely. And choose wisely is take time, don't rush. And it's okay to be attracted to the same sex, but always ask yourself: is God the first one served at my house? Is God the first one in my priorities? And if it's not, you're doing it wrong, and that's okay. And we can get it wrong, but we just gotta try again. Always,
Yeah.
we can always try again. God's mercy is endless.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Feel free to comment. What are your thoughts, experiences on this topic that we covered? And yeah, let me know some topics you'd like me to cover in the future and any conversations you'd like to see me have. You guys can find me at Catholic.converts on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, everywhere in between, and make sure to follow and like so that this continues to make space in the algorithm. Thanks for listening, and God bless you all.